And a pleasant good evening to you. Hope everyone is doing okay. My name is Keith Williams. I'm your host for the Archer Showcase, the podcast where we show some love to those who have published a book or two, or you may have done a blog or video blog, or you are a publisher that is looking to get some people published. Well, that's what we do here. We promote these type of people. And today we have another author in the midst of us. His name is Karl Beckstrand. Um, Good evening.
Hi, Keith. Thanks for having me.
So first of all, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
So I'm a publisher, small publisher. I started out as an author trying to get my multicultural children's books published. Found a small publisher here locally. I'm in Utah, and got everything set up to publish my first book. And the day we went to print, my publisher died. So I got a crash course in marketing my first book. And I've since published 26 more books. My company has about 200 products. And I've published in just about every genre, not sci-fi, but just about every genre.
Oh, so we have a book publisher in the midst. How long you been in the book publishing business?
Gosh, since 2004.
2004, roughly about 18 years. That is great. So you're pretty much fluent in the area of publishing.
I like to think so, but I'm always learning. Plus the industry is changing all the time, so you have to keep learning.
Okay, so what is the difference between traditional publishing and self-publishing?
So traditional publishers used to have all the prestige, they still do, but they used to have a monopoly on distribution, which they don't anymore. Just about anybody can get the big distributors. And they used to control content, which was kind of not fun for the writer. And they would control marketing. And so I learned with my two experiences with other publishers that I preferred to control distribution, content, and marketing, and basically the money. I mean, the publishers are now a middleman who get a percentage, and maybe that's not always great for the author.
Which one you think is better, traditional or self-publishing?
Well, traditional publishing still has the prestige, still has, the honor of, Random House or one of the big five. Being published by one of those gives you prestige. But I found that when I left marketing to publishers, they didn't do a great job. I was actually a better marketer than they were. And so I preferred not only to control marketing, but to control the content of my books. I didn't have to fight with anybody about what was in my books. And then also the money. So I prefer self-publishing. And technology has made that pretty easy these days.
I just can't write and leave marketing to someone else, right? Or how do I get my book into the hands of the reader?
Oh, that's an excellent question. So the bad news is that whether you're published with a big publishing house or whether you self-publish, the lion's share of marketing really is on your shoulders as the author. Even with a big publisher, they still think that you're the best spokesperson for your book, and that's true. Who knows your book better than you? Who can tell readers better than you why it's worth reading? So to get the book into the hands of readers, now that may take the rest of the podcast. That's a multi-step process. Do you want me to just start in and you can interrupt me with other questions?
I mean, can you give me a summary of that process?
So first of all, you want to make sure that your book is well written, that your message is worthwhile. You may be writing in a genre that's very popular, but if there's nothing about your story or your message that stands out, then you won't have something that's marketable. So you want to first have an outstanding message. Even if you're writing in something that's people have written a lot in, like romance, for example, if there's tons of romance books, if you're going to write in that genre or any genre, you have to find a way to make your romance novel better than the others or unique from the others. And then you want to have an excellent editor. No matter whether you self-publish or publish traditionally, you cannot skip that step, because if you skip the step of an editor, your readers will know it. I mean, writers typically become blind to errors in their manuscripts. It's just a normal thing. Even if you're an excellent writer and an excellent editor, you still want to have somebody else, a fresh pair of eyes, make sure that your writing is well done. And then you want to have a professional book designer design your book, not just the cover, but the interior layout has to be done professionally by someone who knows how they should look. You want to have a blurb about your book that catches readers' attention or book buyers' attention. You've got to grab them in the first line. And so those are all elements that are very important to being noticed by readers and book buyers.
All right. Is there anything else that you think that will help get a book into the hands of the reader?
Absolutely. There's so many things. Reader reviews. So you can get beta readers, you can get people who will read your manuscript before it's published and give you feedback and input, help make it a really good story. Those same people, if they like your work, will help promote your book and write reviews for you. And I noticed a trend a few years back that as my reviews went up, so did my sales. Even a bad review can help your book get noticed, as long as all of your reviews aren't bad. You want to have the majority of them be good. But yeah, reviews are very important. Another thing that's critical is distribution, and we could talk for days about that, but I'll just say that if you self-publish through Amazon's KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, they not only list your book on their site, but from what I've been told, they will list it with Ingram. You can also self-publish your book through Ingram. They do hardcovers. And Ingram is probably the largest book distributor in the country. And just being on their list is a start for people to be able to at least find your book. Now, it's not enough. You'll still need to market. But once you're self-published through Amazon or Ingram, or traditionally published, Ingram will still get your book title as well. And there are other distributors, Follett, Baker and Taylor, Brodart. These companies will list you, but they won't necessarily promote you. So being listed is helpful. And if you want to contact one of these big distributors or wholesalers, Follett, for example, or Ingram, you might contact them after you've self-published and say, I understand that because I've published through Amazon's KDP, you already have my book in your list. What about setting up an agreement directly between us? And then I can update you on my future books, and you can let your book buyers know about all of my books. So that's a way to get your book into the hands of decision makers, at least. And of course,
are there like are there like services specifically, like if an author wants someone to promote and market their book for them? Are there services specifically for that?
yes, there are. Traditionally, they're called publicists, but you can also hire marketing companies to write your copy, to get your book on certain websites. And I've paid money to some of those organizations with mixed results. I found, as I mentioned, that the person most passionate about my book is me, and that I'm actually a better marketer than a company that you pay. So I think the person speaking to the listener, you are the most passionate person, the person best equipped to market your book. And you will probably do a better job than a lot of these companies.
So it's not really worth the money to have someone to publish it for, I mean, to promote it for you.
Well, it's something you might experiment with. I did that. I experimented and learned. You know, sometimes sales did increase, but often I would learn from what those companies did, and then I was thinking, oh well, I can do that, and so I later just did it myself.
Now, how do you write a fiction and nonfiction for maybe press or periodical, for broadcast media, film, or on the internet?
So yeah, those are all different areas where you can be a writer. You can freelance and submit articles to magazines. Um, what I understand writers typically do now is rather than write the article, they first write a treatment or a summary of what the article is that they propose to write. And they send that summary or treatment to the magazine. And the magazine will tell them whether or not they want it. And then the writer writes the article. Saves a lot of effort and rejection. It's better to know up front that the online source or the magazine wants what you're writing before you write it.
So I talked to quite a bit of authors who have self-published their work, and some of them, after reading their bio and everything, that they actually, became Amazon bestsellers. I have a friend locally
Yes.
here who, published a book, and he became an Amazon bestseller,
Yes.
as well.
And that's not as hard as it sounds.
Mhm.
Um, Amazon, when you publish through them, gives you 10 categories you can put your book under. Now you have to research your genre carefully because there's a lot of categories. And Amazon rewards people who have relevancy with their selected categories, who are very targeted and specific in the categories that they choose for their books. In fact, you can get 10 more categories for your ebook. So 20 categories. Um, and by selecting the right categories, it's not terribly difficult to be number one in that category. And you can say, with a couple of sales on Amazon, you're number one in a certain category. You can say, I'm a number one bestseller on Amazon. And that helps your book get seen.
Okay. Now, if I write a biography or an autobiography, what makes a good biography or autobiography? Something that people wouldn't mind reading.
Well, it has to be like any other book. It has to be compelling. It has to be unique. It has to be well done. So you have to have a message that's either very unique or better than other books in the same genre. I've written about 6 biographies. In fact, my latest book is a nonfiction self-help book that's very autobiographical because I've drawn on my own experiences in my life. And but you have to know what your message is and that it's better than or unique from the other messages in that same genre.
Are diverse cultures well represented in literature? So would you say that, the number of authors there are in the world, does it, would you consider it's well diverse?
Oh, I think the diversity of authors is wonderful. Yes, I think all races, all creeds, all politics are represented by authors around the world. What has been difficult has been getting representation into the characters in the books. When I was growing up, like I mentioned, I started out with children's books, and the children's books that I saw as a child didn't represent the world around me. I grew up in San Jose, California, which is Silicon Valley, very cosmopolitan. So I was in a very diverse culture. And the books that I read had lots of blonde, blue-eyed white kids. And I thought, well, this isn't representative of the world. So I decided that when I wrote children's books, that my characters would represent the world and have real diversity in them. And I think that's important. I think it's important that readers can identify with the characters in the story. And so diversity is important. In fact, I've also had worked with a number of illustrators from different places, from Asia and Europe and Latin America, because I think it's important to have writers and illustrators also be diverse.
You also teach media on the college level, as well as using arts to give people of all backgrounds a vision of their worth and potential.
Yes, I've been teaching at a college level for going on 9 years. I started out teaching journalism at a state university here in Utah. Loved that. That was my undergraduate degree, was journalism, and helping people write not just for newspapers, but for the web. And then I currently teach digital media, which is kind of a glorified art class. It's using the Adobe Creative Cloud and other programs to create digital content, graphics, graphic design, logos, web content, book design, things like that.
And to give everyone a background of Karl, besides being a media instructor, he is also a best-selling author, and we will be talking about some of his books later on, as well as an illustrator of 27 multicultural, multilingual books, including 65 ebooks, which was reviewed. It has 65 ebook reviews by Publishers Weekly, Kirkus, the Horn Book, and School Library Journal. You also have a broad of talent ranging from journalism to conflict resolution, broadcasting, and film.
Well, I'm old. So I've been blessed with experience just because of having been around the planet for a while.
So let's talk about your the main novel that you have on here is called Swallow the Earth,
Mm-hmm.
a Western novel. It's won a 2016 International Book Award. So let's talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, that was a collaboration with another author, and that author happened to be my grandfather, who passed away decades ago, but my mother gave me his manuscript. He grew up near the Sierra Nevada mountains in Northern California. And so he, as a child, hunted and fished in the mountains and was on horseback all the time. And he loved that land. And so he wrote a Western set in that same area. And it was beautifully descriptive. And that's the skill that he had that I didn't. Because of my journalism background, my writing is very concise. It's great for children's books. But to be flowery or descriptive, I did not have that skill. And he had a great story, a great Western story. It had some holes in the plot, and it needed some character development. So I supplied some chapters and some character development, and I feel like I enriched his story. It's quite an adventure. It's action-packed from page 1 to the end. And yeah, we won an International Book Award. It was really fun to collaborate. Although when you collaborate with someone who's passed away, you don't have a lot of conflict.
So what's the premise of the novel?
So it's about a young man who goes away. He has a fight with his dad, goes off to see the world and make a way for himself. Goes through some hard knocks and comes home a little bit more humble. Goes to make amends with his dad, and he can't find his dad anywhere. And then it's also about a young woman who was sent off to finishing school in San Francisco, also comes home and can't find her father. So these two young adults are, they each have a family mystery that they're trying to solve. And at first they're pitted against each other over some land issues. And there's a lot of conflict between them. But then later they learned to work together to solve their unique mysteries.
Who would you say is the target audience?
So I would say, gosh, anyone from 15 years old and up. It's a pretty clean book. It's got some violence. It's a Western, it's set in the Nevada Silver Rush era around Carson City, Sierra Nevada Mountains, Tahoe area. So it's got some violence, but it's clean and has a great cast of characters. This young man is actually half Mexican, raised by a family of Native Americans. And the Native Americans really turn out to be the heroes of the story. So it's a great story, very diverse and full of really enriched characters.
Are there any authors that kind of inspire you to write or engage in a literary career?
Absolutely. I didn't even realize that books could be fun until I was in the 3rd grade. I got the measles, and my grandmother bought me a chapter book called Bicycles North by Rita Ritchie. And it was a mystery on wheels. And I just gobbled that book up. It was the first time I realized that books could transport me elsewhere and could be fun. And so by then I was hooked. I read, of course, Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. To Kill a Mockingbird is always one of my favorites. So lots of authors have inspired me. For nonfiction, my favorite author is David McCullough, who just recently passed away, but he wrote 1776, which is an amazing story. And the biography of John Adams, David McCullough was able to take an unlikable character like John Adams and make it an outstanding book. Just made you love all the things that John Adams did.
You mentioned earlier that that when you try to get the book published, that your publisher died the day that the book was supposed to be printed. So that means you had to go with someone else?
No, so yes, my first publisher was just a tiny operation. Kind of did everything in-house with family. And the day the book was to print, his wife called me and said, he's passed away. He had food poisoning, and we didn't expect that would be very serious, but he succumbed. And so when I hung up the phone, I was grieving for him, but then I also my head was spinning. I was thinking, well, he was going to do the marketing. And I didn't know anything about book marketing. But fortunately, his widow shared some things with me about things I could do. And based on what I learned, and some of it was through mistakes, I actually eventually started my own publishing company.
How did you get into, actually being a publisher, and what does it take to be a book publisher?
Well, I think I'll start by telling you how I became a writer, which is something I'd never planned on. But I actually studied journalism because it was a short program, because I wanted to graduate quickly. But journalism gave me the writing chops. And while I should have been doing my homework in college, I kept getting story ideas and scribbling them down, thinking, oh, well, when I'm old and retired, I'll see if I can get these published. But what happened was, not too long after finishing college, I joined a writers group here in Utah, and like a greenie, walked around manuscript in hand saying, hey, will someone publish my book? Or do you know an agent? And I actually met this gentleman who published my first book. And then, as I mentioned, from the things that I learned working with one other publisher and having a bad experience with the second publisher as well, I decided that I'd learned enough to launch my own company. Again, self-publishing is pretty easy nowadays with the technology. KDP helps you publish ebooks and paperback books, and I guess now hardcovers. There's also a company called Smashwords, which was just purchased by Draft to Digital, which publishes your ebook. You don't even pay them. You upload your ebook manuscript, and they will distribute it to all the major ebook platforms at no charge, and they'll pay you royalties. So publishing has really changed and become simpler thanks to technology.
Is it expensive to run that type of operation?
It is if you know which expenses to avoid. So I don't pay an agent because I don't need one. I'm a publisher. An agent represents you to publishers, so I don't need an agent. Although I do have a foreign rights agent, and they can get you publishing deals in other countries, which is great. So those are worth having. Other expenses you can avoid are, sometimes you just have to spend some money to learn. That's what I did. For example, Amazon ads. I lost a lot of money on Amazon ads my first couple of years, but now I'm making money because I've learned through painful experience how to make those ads work. You can pay companies to manage your ads for you, and they do ads not just on Amazon, but Facebook and Google and other platforms. And there are also companies that will promote when you have a free day or a free promotion. So in order to get your book into readers' hands, sometimes you'll offer it for free for certain days. And there are companies you can pay who will advertise that and promote that it's free and increase your readership. And that increases your ranking on Amazon.
You also did some substantial amount of traveling as well. Uh, what experience have you picked up by going to other countries?
Well, I lived in Chile in South America for 2 years. I was an LDS missionary for my church. And, it's funny, I thought I was going down there to help people or teach people, but really I was the one who was learning and being helped. And it was probably the best education I ever had. The Chilean people are wonderful and very generous. Of course, I learned Spanish, and then I got to travel to other countries, of course, all of North America and Eastern Europe and Spain and a little bit in Asia. Some of it for work, some of it for pleasure. And I wish every kid in America could travel, at least be in a foreign country, at least one foreign country for a period of weeks or months, because it's so important to learn that people are essentially people everywhere you go. And they have flaws just like Americans have flaws, and they're wonderful like Americans are wonderful. But you also come to appreciate the differences in cultures, not only food or music, but in how the countries are run. And you gain at least I gained an appreciation for the United States of America and our Constitution because of the freedoms we have and our rights and our things that are protected, where in other countries not always protected the same way.
So you have written so many, other titles. What are some of the other titles that you have written?
So my first book was a picture book called Sounds in the House, a mystery. And then I quickly added Spanish. So it's a bilingual book and it has a pronunciation guide. Very simple book, but I figured that a picture book with both languages would help someone learn another language. And it has a pronunciation guide for each language. And it's kind of spooky, but not too scary for little kids. And then I have, several bilingual books, all picture books with a pronunciation guide. I have career books for kids, a cookbook for kids, mini mysteries for minors, a book of short stories and poems. A true series, a nonfiction series on immigrant children taken from my own family history. I have ancestors from South Africa and Sweden and Scotland and England. And I've written biographies of some of these ancestors who immigrated as children and some of the obstacles that they overcame. It's just an inspiring series because it shows that even at a young age, people can be courageous and have great hope and goals and dreams, and they faced hardship too. And so, it's the series is called Young American Immigrants. What else do I have? I have a romance. I have, as I mentioned, a Western novel, tongue twisters for tots, and stories without words. So I have 3 picture books that don't have any words at all. I just worked with illustrators to describe the action. And I think that kind of book helps a child cement vocabulary that they already have by saying out loud what's going on in the pictures. Or even an older child can write a story to go along with the pictures.
The Western novel that you mentioned, is that your latest book?
No, my latest book is called Abundant Paths. It's a self-help book. It's kind of a relationships book. It's Abundant Paths Beyond Either Or Thinking to Fulfilling Same-Sex Relationships That Last. So in looking at relationships, I discovered that people often see, well, in any choice, they often see only 2 choices. We're kind of bred to see only 2 choices in front of us. I noticed that even in the gay world, people thought, oh, well, my choices are to have a sexual relationship with someone of my sex or be in the closet, as if those were the only 2 choices. And they're not. So that's what that self-help book is about.
Oh, oh, so you have done, a whole lot. Do you like getting any sleep?
I generally sleep pretty well, but yes, I keep busy, that's for sure.
Yes. Do you feel that what you have done in the past and what you're doing in the present is rewarding? And if so, how?
Oh, so rewarding. It's the reason I get up in the morning, because I feel like I have so many ideas in my head, so many stories. They ambush me usually when I'm trying to sleep. So I'll scribble ideas on pieces of paper in the middle of the night, and then in the morning I'll go through my little scraps of paper with ideas. But yes, I feel like it's so important that children feel like they're important and valued, no matter what they look like, no matter where they're from, no matter what they believe. And so I wanted to write stories. As a kid, textbooks put me to sleep. So I wanted to write stories that were fun and entertaining. And I would sneak in a little bit of education in there. And if you're a parent, I don't know if you are, Keith, but if you've ever read a story to a child that was not well written, it puts the parent to sleep. And so I always try to include things in the book that a parent will enjoy, that would be entertaining to even a parent or a librarian or a teacher. And then, yes, with these biographies, these immigrant children, I felt like their courage and their hope and their faith was important to share with the world. And not only children enjoy these, but adults buy these children's biographies. And then, of course, my own story. The Abundant Paths book is based much on my own life, things that I've learned in relationships, and hoping that I can help others to avoid some pitfalls and pain and heartache that I've experienced, and find some of the happiness that I've found in looking at more than 2 options.
Do you do like any type of speaking engagements or anything like that?
I do. I regularly speak on publishing and contrasting, like we've done today, on the difference between traditional and self-publishing. And then, of course, I speak on the topics of my books, the relationships, or on how to write nonfiction, or how to write a screenplay, or how to write for kids.
What type of publishing services do you offer?
So we're a pretty self-contained publishing house. We're not accepting new manuscripts right now because guess who has too many story ideas he's working on? I have too many manuscripts to publish, so I'm not accepting submissions. But I do always accept submissions from illustrators, always looking for new talent in art, and of course diversity, either in the artist or in their artwork. So yeah, we do it all. We do our own accounting, we do our taxes, we do our billing, and working with distributors and libraries.
Is That's a lot of work. So Do you do this all yourself, or do you have a staff?
I have a partner and I have a publicist and I have, like I said, a foreign agent. And then I contract a lot of things out, like the editing. I've edited other people's books, but I don't edit my own because, as I mentioned, you can be blind to your own mistakes. So I pay editors outside of my company. And then I've paid translators to translate. Like I speak Spanish, but I've always paid a native Spanish editor to make sure my Spanish was correct. That's really important, things like that. So I contract a lot.
Well, you certainly are diverse in the books that you have published across various genres. So I'm assuming that your audience is pretty big.
Well, you would think, but when most of my books in the early years were children's books, I had the added challenge of having an audience that aged out. Because so many of my books were picture books, I was perpetually trying to grow my audience because it would naturally shrink as children got older. They would want, more chapter books, which I didn't have a lot of. So I think a lot of children have read my books. A lot of people have read my books. But yes, it's always
I,
worth to grow.
I didn't know that, books exist that, it's just have pictures and not words.
Yeah. In fact, there's also a children's book that has words and no pictures.
So I mean, how does that work? How would I read a book with just pictures?
Well, the idea is to involve the child. So you open the book and you say, what's happening on this page? Like one of mine is called Polar Bear Bowler. It's about a polar bear that hitches a ride on a boat all the way down to Antarctica, and he sees penguins. He's never seen penguins before. And from a distance, they look kind of like bowling pins. So he makes this big bowling ball of snow and rolls it toward the penguins. And the penguins aren't happy about that. So it's the idea is the child can describe these activities that are happening. And you can say, what was the polar bear thinking? Or how do you think the penguins felt having a big snowball thrown at them? Things like that. And it helps the child to develop their words.
Oh, okay. Is it common to have? Is it a common place to have those type of books?
I think there are more and more of them. I don't know who wrote the first picture book with no words. I wasn't the first, but I feel like it's a good concept to help teach kids.
Yeah, it was. I don't see a lot of that, in traditional public schools, but like if you have like a tutoring program, I've seen, where there are picture books involved. In fact, last year I participated in a tutoring program for first to third graders to amp up their reading skills, and there was quite a bit of picture books
Yeah,
in the collection, and the hope is to get the child to be more interactive and develop critical thinking, and kind of get them to to develop this their story.
yeah,
So that was a very great thing that I was involved in. Not so much this year because I have so many other things going on. So I kind of act as a substitute. Like for example, if I have some free time on my hands, then yes, I would probably go back to it. But right now it just too much is going on.
sure. Yeah. You reminded me that I had a book, actually a picture book for teenagers. I know that's kind of unusual, but it's called The Bridge of the Golden Wood, and it's to teach financial principles. And the nice thing about it is it has a nice fable or story you can read to young children. But at the end of the story, it has tips and ideas for teenagers on how to start working and how to have a career. So in fact, the state of Vermont chose that book as part of their financial curriculum for primary schools.
Oh wow, I think every school district in the country should have their hands on that book.
Well, thank you. I do
As
too.
part of their curriculum. Really, because a lot of these kids when they graduate, high school have no idea about basic financial literacy. Like for example, how to balance a checkbook, how to fill out an application for a
Yep.
job interview skills. None of that is being taught in public schools these days, and they definitely need to go back to that.
Yeah. I remember in my public school in high school, we did have a careers class. So hopefully they happen in certain places, but you're right, not enough. More of that teaching should happen.
So when they go to college, they're actually, oh, I guess the word I can use is ignorant. You
Yeah.
know, they just don't know. Not saying they're ignorant as being stupid. I'm not saying that. I'm saying they just don't know because they was not taught.
Yeah.
And so I think that that definitely every public school should have that type of curriculum. And I think that book that you have mentioned would be tremendous because also it will activate their thinking skill.
Yeah.
So we're actually teaching students how to think for themselves.
Yeah. A lot of my books have QR codes that will link to my website because there's a lot of extra content online that couldn't fit into the book. Like I have an astronomy book for kids, but the glossary was so extensive, I just put it online. And so there's a link in the book to that. And the financial book, The Bridge of the Golden Wood, also has extras on our website.
Oh, I'm sorry, I guess I kind of missed what you were saying earlier.
Oh, I was just saying that a lot of our content is on our website. We we give links in the back of our book, QR code that gives extra information, like on jobs or on recipes, look for the cookbook, or on astronomy, things like that. So we try to have a lot of extra information on our website for kids to go look up.
Oh, fantastic. So now we got all the questions out of the way. We're gonna get ready to close out here. It was certainly a pleasure of meeting with you and chatting with you today. Now, if someone wants to learn more about you, what you do, where can they publish your books? Or, for example, if I know that you're not taking manuscripts right now, but uh, to learn more about you as a publisher,
Sure.
how are they able to get in touch with you?
So our website is premiobooks.com. I'll spell that. It's P as in Paul, REMIO books.com. And has all of our books and our online extras and lesson plans and fun activities.
Now, how they be able to reach you personally?
I'm at Karl, Karl, at premiobooks.com.
All right. Are you so pretty much they can, purchase your books anywhere where books are being sold.
They're on, of course, Amazon and Walmart's website and Target's website and Barnes and Noble and all the major ebook platforms as well.
Okay. So as we do with all of our guests, no matter what podcast they're on, we roughly have about four, podcasts. And all of our guests, what we do is we invite the guests to say the last words, and it could be absolutely anything.
Okay. Well,
So, what are your last words?
if you're a writer, I would encourage you to make your book the best it can be and then never stop marketing that book. Never act as though it's an old book. Always behave as if it's a brand new book and it'll continue to sell.
Short and to the point. Um, Thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. And I might add, you definitely have a busy schedule
Yes.
to, come on and share with the listening and viewing audience on you and, what you do. Certainly have a distinctive literary career, and you're willing to, help others get published. I think for some people, it's been their lifelong dream to, have a book published. I actually, been writing since 2001, actually. But my first book, I believe, came out in 2014.
Yeah, and
Oh, so yes,
that's not uncommon.
yes. So even though I'm the host of the author showcase, I'm also an author too.
Awesome. Yeah, and you are a good example of persistence because lots of writers take years and years before they actually get their books out, and that's okay.
And I think in the whole time that I've been podcasting, that I've only uh, mentioned about myself as an author, once.
Uh,
Had a whole entire segment to where I just talk about myself, the books that I have published. So
awesome. What
was
genre do you write in?
I it's mostly nonfiction.
Awesome. I love nonfiction. So,
I wrote a poetry book, um, which was actually the first book I've written was a poetry book. Um, that was actually the first book in 2014. Um, and people are wondering, when there's going to be a part two. And I was like, well, I really didn't have the time to do a part two. So I, think once I find some time, then, there will be a part two to, book that was written 8 years ago. So, that's
awesome.
kind of like a long span between a part one and a part two.
Hey, it could be worth it. Things that take a long time are worth the wait.
Yes, absolutely. Um, so that was the only time that I mentioned, myself, because that's really not what this podcast is about. It's not to, you know, necessarily promote what I have done, but it's also to promote other authors.
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity, Keith.
Thank you so much for being on today, and that will do it for this edition. We hope that you have enjoyed this wonderful author. Um, been just about every continent except Antarctica, according to his biography. So he has done some extensive travel, and and to take his time out to be on here, I'm very appreciative of that. Well, that will do it for us here on the Author Showcase. I'm Keith Williams, your host. Hope you enjoyed this segment, and be sure to join us for another one next time where we'll have another great artist or author or publisher. May never know who that person is going to be. So, in order to find out, you have to tune in. And we hope that you will continue to tune in to all of our segments, of course, on Facebook, YouTube, Anchor, Spotify, and all the popular podcasts. You can go back to past episodes where we had some great authors providing some great stories and some great content. So please go over to whatever podcast platform that you listen to and tune in to the Author Showcase. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.